Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to my prediction for the upcoming death battle between Doctor Strange and Dr. Fate. In this video, I will be going over the characters' backstories, their powers and capabilities, why these characters were paired against each other, and then finally, who I think is going to win. As for what I've researched for this match, I unfortunately didn't quite have time to cover all of Doctor Strange's vast comic book history, at least not in 1 week. However, I was still able to read several hundred of his comics, and I investigated most of his more famous feats. As such, I am decently confident in my understanding of his capabilities. As for Dr. Fate, it's a tad more complicated. You see, normally when researching DC characters, I only cover stuff that occurred after Crisis on Infinite Earths, as historically Death Battle has also focused primarily on post-Crisis canon. However, 2 reasons have pushed me to include all of Dr. Fate's history, even the pre-Crisis comics. The first reason being that some people have argued that Fate wasn't affected by the Crisis, and the second reason being that Fate has so few comics that excluding his pre-Crisis adventures would take away most of his feats. As such, I have decided to include all of his comics, including the Golden Age and Silver Age adventures, as quite frankly, the post-Crisis Dr. Fate on his own just doesn't have enough feats to stand much of a chance. So, that said, I have read the majority of Dr. Fate's comics and adventures from the 1940s to the present, and I do believe I have a pretty firm grasp of his abilities. As such, I am decently confident regarding who I think is going to win. With all that said, let's get into it. First up is Dr. Stephen Strange, the Sorcerer Supreme. Even before finding magic, Dr. Strange was a genius when it came to surgery. He was the best of the best, but he was also a huge jerk to everyone around him. This behavior ultimately resulted in a co-worker arranging for Strange to have an unfortunate car accident, and while Strange survived, his hands suffered permanent damage. After recovering, he could still use his hands, but he could no longer use them precisely enough for surgery. This devastated Strange, and sent him on a desperate search for some way to fix his hands. He consulted the best doctors, and when they couldn't help him, he moved on to asking mystics. Strange was on the verge of giving up when he heard a passing conversation about a mysterious sorcerer called the Ancient One. Willing to try anything at this point, Strange decided to track down this Ancient One, and his journey took him deep into the Himalayan mountains. There he discovered the private retreat of the one he sought, and he discovered that the Ancient One could give him far more than fixed hands if he was willing. After some deliberation, Strange accepted, and his training in the mystic arts of magic began. Turns out Strange was a prodigy, and in a decade or 2, he had mastered magic that had taken the Ancient One centuries to learn. And it's a good thing too, because many powerful foes were rising up to try and magically conquer the world. Everything from evil sorcerers to godlike extra-dimensional entities have come to conquer the Earth, but Dr. Strange was always there to stop them. And after the Ancient One passed away, Strange officially donned the mantle of Sorcerer Supreme, and he has been protecting the Earth from magical cosmic threats ever since. That is Dr. Strange's story. Now let's look at what he can do. As the Sorcerer Supreme, Strange has mastered practically every form of magic known to man, so while I will be listing his more famous and impressive spells, keep in mind that he has far more at his disposal than just these few. Also, I will be mispronouncing everything in this video. You have been warned. The bolts of bedevilment are projectile energy blasts, the Conjurer's Cone banishes enemies into other dimensions, and the Crimson Bands of Sidorak ensnare enemies in bands of practically indestructible magic, and can even ensnare enemies as powerful as the Hulk. The Crystals of Siandrier is effectively a death spell, the Demons of Danak summon demonic claws to tear enemies to ribbons, and the Flames of the Faltine burn away enemy magic, which has multiple uses as it can be used to destroy both enemy defenses and incoming attacks. The Images of Icon is a favorite of his and consists of him making a bunch of illusionary duplicates of himself. The Icy Tendrils of Icthalon freeze enemies in ice. The Mists of Manipur create a mist that blinds enemies, and the Shield of the Seraphim surrounds Strange in a defensive energy field that blocks incoming attacks, and is Strange's preferred defensive spell. Now, again, while these are Strange's preferred spells, his magic is extremely versatile, and the only real limitation on what it can do is Strange's imagination. Just to throw out some of his other random magical abilities, he can teleport, transmute substances, heal himself, cleanse his mind of hallucinations, move things through telekinesis, fly, turn himself intangible, turn invisible, make himself grow bigger or smaller, slow down, stop, or even travel through time, control the elements, travel between dimensions, and he also has enhanced magical senses that let him detect things no normal person can. In addition, after defeating Death herself, Strange is now immortal and cannot die of natural causes. Also, while most of Strange's magic is technically white magic, he also has skill in black magic, and arguably the most useful aspect of this magic is that Strange can use it to outright take the power of another entity for himself, against their will, even from cosmic entities as powerful as Captain Universe and Shumagorath. This power is risky and requires extreme willpower to pull off, but it has been quite effective in boosting Strange's powers in the past. If that wasn't enough, Strange also has the ability to channel the power of various cosmic entities in order to boost his power. By channeling the power of Zom, Strange could match the World Breaker Hulk in a fistfight. By channeling the power of some Cthulhu entity, Strange could one-shot an alternate universe's version of the Justice League. And by channeling the power of Master Order and Lord Chaos, the literal embodiments of chaos and order in the universe, Strange was able to defeat the In-Betweener, an entity with almost unlimited reality-warping power. And the last major magical ability Strange has is his power to create an astral projection of himself. This form is separate from his mortal body, is completely intangible, and can travel unimaginably fast, and Strange can still use magic even while in this form. Outside of his blatantly magical abilities, Strange is also a powerful psychic. He can read minds, wipe memories, and even mind control people, and he stated that he is more than capable of causing permanent brain damage with this power if he's so pleased. His prowess as a psychic is so great that other psychics cannot read his mind, and he was even able to best the Ancient One in a psychic duel. However, arguably one of Strange's greatest powers is his skill as a hypnotist. Strange can plant hypnotic suggestions in people's minds just from them looking at him, and from there he can make them see things that aren't real, or do things he wants them to do. His prowess as a hypnotist is so great that he has successfully used it on cosmic entities while in their own realm, including Umar and Nightmare. In case you didn't know, in the Marvel Universe, when a cosmic entity is in their own realm, they are, and I quote, practically omnipotent. Meaning Strange was able to hypnotize non-human, godly entities just because they looked at him. And he doesn't even need his magic powers to do it. When he hypnotized Nightmare, he did so while in Nightmare's nightmare realm, which, like I said, made him practically omnipotent. Nightmare used this omnipotence to strip Strange of his magical powers. Yet despite this, Strange was able to hypnotize this godlike entity without Nightmare, or the audience, noticing he had done it. When combining hypnotism with his psychic and magical powers, Strange's sheer ability to screw with people's minds is astronomical. He can even combine his hypnotism with his power to create illusionary duplicates of himself in order to make it so that just looking at an illusion of Strange will get you hypnotized. And most impressively of all, Strange once used these powers to put the Beyonder into an illusionary world so convincing that he could have trapped him there for all eternity if he so pleased. In case you didn't know, the Beyonder is one of the most powerful entities in Marvel history, as he is capable of warping reality on a universal scale when he sees fit. So being able to trick someone like him shows just how potent Strange's mind games are. In addition, while he doesn't use these skills too often, Strange has been trained in martial arts, and is also an accomplished doctor, so he has a very strong understanding of the human body's strengths and weaknesses. If Strange wasn't dangerous enough on his own, he also wields a variety of magical artifacts that boost his versatility and power significantly. Strange's collection is vast, but I'll try and focus on his main gear. The Cloak of Levitation allows Strange to fly without expending his own magic, and it can be psychically commanded to attack and ensnare enemies. The cloak is also highly resistant to magical attacks, making it quite useful as a shield. Next is the Eye of Agamotto, which is a powerful artifact Strange wears as an amulet. The eye can release healing energy, open portals, create force fields, destroy evil things, and it allows Strange to see through illusions and deceptions. The eye will automatically defend Strange, and enemies caught in its glow will find their willpower being drained, which leaves them wide open to Strange's various mental attacks. However, arguably one of the eye's greatest functions is its ability to absorb magical power. Enemy spells can be outright consumed by the eye, and if directed to by Strange, the eye can completely drain vastly powerful magical artifacts, permanently ridding them of mystical power. The eye is also connected to another artifact called the Orb of Agamotto. This orb is kept in Strange's house, but with the eye it can be accessed remotely. The main function of the orb is that it can detect any notable magical threat on Earth or in any neighboring dimensions to Earth. Through this, it becomes extremely difficult to hide from Strange. And last but not least is the Book of the Vishanti, a spellbook which contains some of the most powerful white magic spells in the universe. The main use of this book in combat, however, is that it can be used as a magical shield. Specifically, it can bounce enemy spells back at his attackers. Now, those are the main magical artifacts Strange uses, however he keeps far more back in his house, such as the Wand of Watum, the Purple Crystal, and so on, and he can summon those to his aid if he needs them. They have various uses. Regardless, that's the basic rundown of Strange's powers and equipment, so now let's move on to base stats. Quick note, in these base stats I will also be discussing the power and capabilities of Strange's magic. For example, physical strength isn't really relevant for Strange, so instead I'll be talking about the power, or strength, of his offensive magic. Similarly, when I get to durability, I will be discussing the power or durability of Strange's defensive magic. With that cleared up, let's start with strength. Strange is in peak physical condition, but he mainly relies on magic while in combat, so let's instead talk about how much power his magic is packing. Strange was powerful enough to move Namor's palace with his mind, and he was able to create a magic hand powerful enough to rip Mjolnir out of Thor's grasp. In addition, Strange was once stranded on a dead planet in an alternate dimension. In order to escape, Strange sent his astral form into the center of the planet and released enough energy to cause the planet to explode. And these are only the tip of the iceberg. Strange once held his own against a monster known as Zom in a magical battle, and Zom was so powerful that he was described as being capable of, quote, shattering planets. Strange has also won magical duels against godlike dimensional rulers time and time again, including Dormammu, Nightmare, and Shumagorath, even while in their own realms. And as you may recall, dimensional rulers are practically omnipotent while in their home dimensions, which means Strange would have to be practically omnipotent +1 in order to beat them. However, dimensional rulers aren't the most powerful entities Strange has battled. At one point, Strange actually got into a bit of a tussle with none other than the Living Tribunal, an entity powerful enough to wipe out universes on a whim. In this tussle, the Living Tribunal used the Crimson Bands of Sidorak to bind Strange, yet Strange was able to break free right away. This astounded the Living Tribunal to the point that it said Strange was stronger than it thought possible, which is saying a lot considering the Tribunal oversees infinite universes. However, Strange's power is at his greatest when he channels the power of several of his mystical artifacts simultaneously. Doing this is incredibly difficult and dangerous, but doing so gave Strange enough power to match a completed Infinity Gauntlet in a duel. Allow me to repeat that. Doctor Strange, while in a duel with Adam Warlock wielding a completed Infinity Gauntlet, was able to match its power. The Infinity Gauntlet, when completed with all 6 gems like this, has literally infinite power, and the entire universe becomes a plaything in the hands of its wielder. To match the Infinity Gauntlet in power, Strange would literally have to be wielding universal levels of power. That is how strong Doctor Strange is at his best. Now for speed. It has been stated on multiple occasions that Strange is capable of acting and reacting at lightning speed, or 1/3 the speed of light, but that's not all. In terms of travel speed, Strange has a variety of feats that put his speed many times greater than light. At one point, Strange was able to outfly a death spell cast by Umar, the sister of Dormammu. To figure out how fast her spell would have to be traveling, we need look no further than a few comics later when Umar came to Earth and cast a spell that blasted all the way through the planet in a microsecond. In this instance, the spell traveled from New York City to the Himalayan mountains. The distance between these two locations when traveling through the Earth is about 6,400 miles. So, to traverse that distance in 1 microsecond, Umar's spell would have to have been traveling over 34,360 times light speed. And it is almost certain that the spell Strange Outflew was moving far faster, for a number of reasons. For one, the spell Umar cast on Earth was done quite casually, and since Umar was on Earth and not her home dimension, her powers were far weaker. By contrast, the spell that Strange Outflew was a death spell that Umar cast in a fit of rage while in her home dimension, where her powers were at their peak. As such, the bare minimum Strange would have to be flying to outrace her spell is 34,360 times the speed of light. But there's more! Around the same time, it's mentioned that Strange could fly at the speed of thought, and in that same comic, Strange demonstrated that his psychically projected thoughts could traverse an entire universe in a matter of seconds. As such, if Strange really was traveling as fast as his own thoughts, that would mean he was moving at 293,479,412 times light speed. But that's not all. At one point, Strange was teleported to the beginning of the universe, where he actually managed to outfly the Big Bang. The exact speed the Big Bang traveled at is unknown, but we do know the rate the universe was expanding. As such, all we have to do is plug in the distance for how big the universe started off as, and we can find the speed. Now, there are two ways to approach this. If you believe the universe is infinite, then that means it was always infinite, as that's how infinity works. So, when we plug infinity into the universal rate of expansion at the time of the Big Bang, we find that it would have to be expanding infinitely fast, which means Doctor Strange also would have to have been moving infinitely fast. However, if you do not think the universe is infinite, then we have to actually input a real distance into the equation, which, for the sake of lowballing, since this feat is already insane enough without highballing, we'll assume that the universe started off as the smallest measurable distance known to man, a Planck length. And when we plug that into the formula, we find that the absolute minimum speed the universe could possibly expanding at this point in time is over 266 trillion times light speed. That not crazy enough for you? Well, there's more. No matter how fast Strange gets, his astral form is always faster. Why? Because, as Strange has repeated many times, his astral form is not affected by the typical laws of time and space. Since speed is specifically defined by time and space, this results in a crazy interaction where Strange's astral projection is capable of moving however fast Strange wants. It is literally capable of traversing any distance in any time frame of Strange's choosing, which means it can reach any place in the universe almost instantly. Since Strange is capable of casting spells even while in astral form, this is a very real combat advantage. Next up is durability. Thanks to his extensive exposure to magic, Strange's body has become much more durable than a regular human. Case in point, at one point while in the Dark Dimension, Strange got hit with a sneaky psychic attack that nearly one-shot him, leaving him defenseless. He was then ambushed by a group of mindless ones, who proceeded to beat the crap out of him. Mindless ones are titanically powerful juggernauts from another dimension, and while their exact strength isn't clear, it is known that a similar group of mindless ones was powerful enough to beat Ben Grimm, aka The Thing, into submission in a matter of seconds. Considering that the Thing has lasted minutes while in battle with the Hulk, this says a lot about how strong the mindless ones are. Needless to say, Strange would have to be quite durable to survive hits from them. But that's just Strange's baseline durability. When he uses defensive magic and force fields, his durability skyrockets. While his shields are up, Strange has blocked attacks from Loki, Umar, Zom, Dormammu, and Voltor. Let's break this down. Loki's energy blasts are powerful enough to one-shot Beta Ray Bill, and Bill can hang out in the core of a star like it's no big deal. Considering the core of the sun releases over 92 billion megatons of energy every second, Loki would have to be packing some astronomical levels of power to one-shot Bill like this, and Strange was able to block such an attack from Loki. Next, we have Umar. Umar, as you may recall, was powerful enough to blast a hole through the planet Earth, and she herself states that slicing through a planet is child's play for her, and Strange was able to block Umar's strongest blast while inside her own dimension. Next up, Strange was able to hold his own against Zom, a monstrous entity so powerful that it scared the crap out of Umar, and it is stated that Zom is powerful enough to shatter entire planets. If that wasn't enough, Zom was so powerful that his release attracted the attention of the Living Tribunal, who only interferes when the entire universe is threatened. Next up, Strange has battled Dormammu countless times, but in one of their more fearsome battles, Dormammu summoned a cosmic storm so intense that it could throw planets from their orbits, and Strange was able to block this attack. And last but not least, Strange was able to block the energy attacks of Voltor, a mechanical titan from a far-off dimension. Voltor's energy attacks were described as being so powerful that they could vaporize mountains and even throw stars from their path. Needless to say, Strange is an incredibly difficult individual to damage, and considering the Eye of Agamotto has healing powers, it only becomes more difficult to put Strange down for good. In terms of skill, Strange is easily one of the most capable sorcerers to have ever existed. He learned magic in a few years that took the Ancient Ones centuries to master, and Strange has a history of learning and mastering any new or alien magic he comes across. In terms of stamina, Strange has battled magical threats to the world for days on end, and should he grow so tired that he runs out of magic, he can completely replenish his mystical energy in just a minute or two of rest. In terms of intelligence, not only is Strange a genius when it comes to magic, he's also a master of strategy and manipulation. When engaging with an enemy using magic he does not recognize, his first goal in every such fight is to use his powers to analyze the nature and origin of their powers. From there, he can then counter their magic much more effectively. And with his hypnotism, psychic tricks, and illusions, Strange has a variety of tools for tricking and manipulating his opponents. In terms of versatility, Strange's vast array of mystical powers make him prepared to handle almost any situation. And in terms of mobility, Strange is not only incredibly fast, but also capable of flight and cross-dimensional teleportation. In terms of particular combat feats, Strange has bested Dormammu, Nightmare, Shumagorath, Galactus, the In-Betweener, and countless other cosmic threats to the Earth. In short, with such vast mystical powers at his fingertips, there are very few foes more dangerous than the Sorcerer Supreme. Now let's talk weaknesses. Despite his power, Strange is still technically human, so if an attack were to get past his defenses, it wouldn't technically take too much to put him down. Also, while Strange is fantastic at battling magical or cosmic foes, he doesn't do so well against more technology-oriented opponents, as that's just not his field of expertise. Also, while using astral projection does give him some advantages, it also has its risks. Should Strange's astral form be separated from his body for more than 24 hours, his body will die. Also, many of Strange's magical abilities rely on him being able to use his hands and speak certain words, so binding his hands and mouth would rid him of a fair chunk of his abilities. And lastly, Strange as a person is far from perfect. Many times over his career, he has made blatant mistakes that resulted in his powers being temporarily stripped away, and there has even been a number of occasions in which he lost the position of Sorcerer Supreme. He has always gotten it back, of course, but it just goes to show that Doctor Strange is not beyond failure and defeat. That's everything I know about Doctor Strange. Now let's cover Dr. Fate, the Sorceress Champion of the Lords of Order. Long ago at the dawn of time, the cosmic entities known as the Lords of Order and the Lords of Chaos came into existence, and they have been fighting ever since. Each side wishes to see either order or chaos reign supreme in the universe. However, due to specific cosmic limitations, in order to battle and affect things directly in the physical world, the Lords have to have mortal hosts in which they could reside and channel their powers. One Lord of Order, called Naboo, decided to search for a host on a little planet called Earth. He took up a human host and settled in ancient Egypt, where he was worshipped as a god. However, Naboo's human body was breaking down due to using too much of his powers, so, in a last-ditch attempt to save his body, Naboo placed himself in suspended animation. Fast forward a few thousand years, and the site where Naboo was interned was discovered by an archaeologist called Sven Nelson and his son, Kent Nelson. Wandering off from his father, it was actually Kent who discovered Naboo, and after being psychically prompted to pull some lever, Kent freed Naboo from his suspended animation. However, doing so released poisonous gas elsewhere in the ruins, and Kent's father was killed by this gas. In order to make up for this tragedy, Naboo promised to teach Kent all sorts of wondrous magical powers. At first, Kent wasn't up to it, but after some minor brainwashing from Naboo, Kent agreed, and began his training. It took him many years, but Kent eventually became capable of telekinesis, flight, and super strength as a result of his training. But the best was yet to come. As part of his graduation, Naboo gave Kent 3 powerful artifacts: the Amulet of Anubis, the Cloak of Destiny, and the Helmet of Fate. When wearing these items together, Kent transforms into the vastly more powerful Dr. Fate. In this form, Kent's mind is actually somewhat submerged in the mind of Naboo, as this whole training process was really just Naboo's way of preparing his new host. However, by granting Naboo control, Fate is able to channel the power of the Lord of Order, and can now achieve feats of magic on a cosmic scale. Using these powers, Kent proceeded to defend the Earth from all sorts of threats, be they mundane or cosmic, and has battled the Lords of Chaos many times. By the way, there have been numerous different people to wear the mantle of Dr. Fate, but I will be focusing on Kent Nelson, as not only is he the original, but he also has the most feats by a long shot. That's Dr. Fate's story. Now let's talk about what he can do. Thanks to Naboo's millions of years of experience and raw power as a Lord of Order, Dr. Fate is one of the most skilled and powerful sorcerers in the universe. Unlike Doctor Strange, Dr. Fate's powers are much more free-form, and not quite focused on specific spells. As such, I will only be talking about the general powers he has, as opposed to any particular spells. Fate can launch energy blasts, teleport in and between dimensions, manipulate the elements, perform telekinesis, manipulate time itself, astral project, create energy constructs, create force fields, cast illusions, turn invisible, turn intangible, manipulate various elemental forces such as magnetism, hypnotize people, transmute one substance into another, and he can project his thoughts through telepathy. In addition, as a part of his sorcerer's training, Kent's body has become practically invulnerable to physical harm, making it so that magic is really the only consistent method for harming Dr. Fate. In addition, Kent apparently has the ability to see people's fates, which I can only interpret as being that he can see how they're going to die. And on top of all that, Fate can magically increase his size to the point that he reaches planet size, although he can only do this for a brief moment and risks his own destruction in doing so. Outside of his magical powers, Kent himself is quite a fan of physical combat, and he has been trained in jujitsu. In addition, Kent himself does have training as a physician, giving him a decent amount of medical knowledge, and he has training as an archaeologist, giving him a decent amount of knowledge of history. And of course, as part of his training, Kent has acquired a pretty significant knowledge of the various occult and mystical forces at play on Earth. Of course, that's just Kent. Naboo has millions, if not billions, of years worth of experience both in magic and combat, and his pool of knowledge is humongous. Of course, that's just the abilities wielded by Fate. Now let's talk about the equipment he wields. First and foremost is the Helmet of Fate, arguably the most powerful magical artifact on Earth. This is the most important part of Dr. Fate's arsenal, as it is what connects Kent Nelson to Naboo. While wearing it, Naboo can take direct control over Kent's body, which is certainly when Fate is at his most powerful. The helmet is an ancient relic passed through the ages, and it is practically indestructible. It has survived passing through black holes without damage, and has only suffered major injury when attacked by beings wielding nearly infinite levels of power, such as the Spectre or Superman. The helmet grants its wielder an enhanced understanding of the universe, and it actually contains its own pocket dimension, which is the place where Naboo's spirit resides. Next is the Amulet of Anubis. This artifact was forged by the Egyptian god Anubis, and actually contains a fraction of the god's power. The amulet boosts Dr. Fate's power, also contains its own pocket dimension, and it can house the souls of dead people. In fact, at different points in time, the amulet has actually contained the souls of different Dr. Fates. Next we have the Cloak of Destiny. Weirdly enough, despite being considered on par with his other magical items, the exact powers granted by the Cloak of Destiny aren't really ever explained, at least as far as I can tell. The best I can guess is that it likely grants Fate some sort of boost to his magical power. Once again, I must remind you that Dr. Fate really doesn't have a ton of comics, so there are going to be some vague and not particularly detailed aspects to his character. Regardless, the last piece of equipment he wields is the Orb of Agamotto, a crystal ball that Fate keeps in his mystical tower. The artifact can be used to spy on people across multiple dimensions, and should some sort of major threat appear on Earth, the orb will automatically contact Dr. Fate in order to warn him about it. That is the general summary of Fate's powers and equipment. Now let's get into base stats. First up is Strength. Unlike Doctor Strange, Dr. Fate has superhuman physical capabilities even without casting any spells. Fate has proven strong enough to pick up a car, rip open a bank vault, and rip a tree out of the ground and use it as a whip. In terms of the strength of his magic, he most certainly operates on a cosmic level. He is described as being capable of practically any form of magic, and it shows. Fate was able to telekinetically fling an airplane into the sky, lift the upper half of a skyscraper, drag an ocean liner, completely level an underwater city, and, most impressively of all, he once magically dragged an alien planet through space and threw it into the sun. The golden age of comics was pretty crazy. If that wasn't enough, Fate has successfully defeated a variety of powerful entities. He bested the evil Green Lantern of the Crime Syndicate, a variety of evil sorcerers, the ridiculous Mr. Who, his arch-rival Watan, the Shadow Man known as Karkal, the Egyptian god Anubis, and even the Lord of Chaos known as Typhon. And arguably his greatest feat is that Dr. Fate and or Naboo, at various points in their history, have successfully managed to fight the Spectre and survived. The Spectre is the literal embodiment of God's wrath, and is one of the most powerful entities in DC history. He wields cosmic power of the highest caliber. As such, to fight the Spectre once and survive is a notable feat, but Fate has survived combat with the Spectre on multiple occasions. That is a feat very few characters can claim. Next up is Speed. Fate is a very fast individual. Throughout his career, he has successfully traveled all over the Earth in a matter of minutes. He was able to keep up with the Golden Age version of the Flash, and he was able to dodge a double-team attack from a mind-controlled Superman and Martian Manhunter. Considering Superman is capable of flying over 1 billion times the speed of light, that's quite a notable feat. But Dr. Fate's greatest speed feat comes from the early days of his adventures. At one point, some planet in another galaxy, in fact the one he threw into the sun, was shooting some fireballs at Earth. So Dr. Fate straight up flew to another galaxy to stop them. The exact time and distance weren't specified, so we'll assume it took 10 minutes, and we'll assume this galaxy was about as far away from Earth as the Andromeda Galaxy. In order to travel that distance in that time, Fate would have to be traveling at over 131 billion times the speed of light. In terms of durability, Fate is almost entirely invulnerable against physical attacks, and while magic attacks can hurt him, they first have to get through his defenses. Fate's magical barriers have held up against attacks from the Spectre, who can move planets, and Dr. Fate has tanked hits from Superman and Ultraman, both of whom can destroy planets at their maximum potential. Heck, the Helmet of Fate was able to survive passing through a black hole, and at this point in time, Naboo was dead, so the helmet was at its weakest. As such, with Fate at the peak of his power, surviving a black hole may even be something he can do. In terms of skill, Fate has eons worth of experience, which makes him almost unparalleled in his mystical skill. In terms of stamina, Fate was once trapped in space with the Justice Society and managed to use his powers for 2 weeks straight in order to keep them alive. In terms of intelligence, Fate is absolutely a genius when it comes to magic, and Jent Nelson himself was able to become a physician in under a year, which would certainly require above-average intelligence. In terms of versatility, Fate's almost unlimited mystical capabilities make him prepared to handle almost any situation. In terms of mobility, Fate is capable of magical flight, teleportation, and super speed, making him about as mobile as physically possible. In terms of particular combat feats, Fate has battled everything from evil sorcerers to gods to members of the Justice Society and the Justice League. And of course, as a Lord of Order, Fate has been constantly battling and defeating the cosmically powerful Lords of Chaos since the dawn of time, and despite being killed multiple times, Kent Nelson has continued to bounce back from death to continue the good fight. With the dedication and purpose of a human combined with the wisdom and power of a Lord of Order, Dr. Fate is one of the most dangerous sorcerers in all of fiction. Now let's talk weaknesses. First and foremost, Dr. Fate suffers from major psychological problems due to the relationship Naboo has with his hosts. Naboo has gradually become corrupted by humanity, and he's only become more controlling as time has gone on, to the point that he has a bad habit of forcibly possessing his hosts all the time. This has caused major emotional and psychological damage for everyone involved. Kent Nelson had a major suicidal streak, and he's actually the most stable of Naboo's hosts. Another host called Eric Strauss was an actual inmate at Arkham Asylum, and another Dr. Fate called Jared Stevens was, well, look at him. Needless to say, all of the Fates have had notable psychological problems, and this weakness has been exploited time and time again. The Lords of Chaos loved to screw with Dr. Fate's mind, the Psycho Pirate was able to force Fate to see hallucinations by directly manipulating his emotions, and the cosmic entity known as Aquarius was able to hypnotize Fate into attacking the Justice League. Another weakness Fate has is that his powers stem from his helmet, so if an enemy were to remove his helmet, he would lose most of his magical powers. And while Fate is resistant to physical damage, this does not apply to his lungs, which means that if you were to trick Dr. Fate into inhaling poison gas, it would actually kill him. Also, Fate is totally capable of being killed by magic. In fact, Fate himself has stated that magical energy blasts are as deadly to him as bullets are to regular humans. So when facing another magical opponent, defending himself is still extremely important. That's everything I know about these characters. Before I get to my prediction, here are all their similarities and/or reasons for the matchup. 1. Marvel vs. DC. 2. Both are heroes who use various magical powers and artifacts to protect the Earth. 3. Both are human doctors who are pushed towards magic by tragedy. 4. Both constantly go up against cosmic threats to the Earth. 5. Both are from comic books and are suspiciously similar to each other. 6. Both have defeated monsters, sorcerers, demons, and gods. 7. Neither character was particularly prolific until recently. And 8. Both are sponsored by powerful cosmic entities looking to bring justice and goodness to the universe. That's all the reasons for the match. Now for my prediction. I think the winner of this death battle will be Doctor Strange. When I first started researching this match, I went to the same places everyone else does. I checked the wikis, and I checked the respect threads. And at first glance, it seemed like this was a pretty even match. However, as I started to fact-check the various feats people were talking about, I quickly realized that Doctor Strange was just as ridiculous as I initially thought, whereas Dr. Fate was not. In fact, almost every major Dr. Fate feat people are talking about on these respect threads are taken way out of context and are blown way out of proportion. I'll go into more depth about these misconstrued feats in a minute. First, let's compare their base stats. Technically speaking, Dr. Fate has more baseline physical strength than Dr. Strange. However, Strange can magically boost his strength high enough to go toe-to-toe with the World Breaker Hulk, which surpasses any strength feat Dr. Fate has. In terms of speed, Dr. Fate could fly to another galaxy in minutes, which would put his speed at billions of times light speed, but Dr. Strange could outfly the Big Bang, which makes him trillions of times light speed. In terms of durability, Fate could just barely survive hits from planet busters like Ultraman, whereas Strange was able to easily block the planet-shattering attacks of Zom, and Strange regularly blocks attacks from cosmic beings far beyond mere planet-busting, such as Dormammu and the In-Betweener. And when it comes to blocking magical attacks specifically, Doctor Strange has far more layers of defense than Dr. Fate. Strange's cloak acts as a shield, the Book of the Vishanti acts as a shield, the Eye of Agamotto devours the spells of his enemies, and thus acts as a shield. And this is all in addition to the magical force field Strange is creating himself. By contrast, the only magical defenses that Dr. Fate has are those that he creates himself, which hardly compares to the multi-layered defenses that Strange has. And this isn't even taking into account Strange's ability to avoid attacks through his illusions and hypnotism, which is a form of defense that Dr. Fate cannot utilize because the Eye of Agamotto allows Strange to see through illusions. And there is no doubt that Doctor Strange's psychic attacks, illusions, and hypnotism would work on Dr. Fate because they've worked on him in the past. The psychic attacks of the Psycho Pirate worked on Dr. Fate, illusions have worked on Dr. Fate every time they've shown up, and Dr. Fate has even been hypnotized before by the being known as Aquarius. As such, with Dr. Fate being so vulnerable to Strange's mind games, he's going to have a hard time landing even a single blow. And with all of Dr. Fate's psychological problems, that's only going to make it easier for Strange to screw with him. And when it comes to raw power, Dr. Fate's best feat has him throwing a planet into the sun. But Doctor Strange's best feat has him matching the power of the Infinity Gauntlet, which puts his power on a universal scale. Naboo may be a cosmic entity and all, but he still ultimately has limits, and he can never hope to stand up to any truly universal forces. Hell, even the Spectre has limits, but that hasn't stopped the Spectre from trouncing both Dr. Fate and Naboo time and time again. As such, it is quite clear that Doctor Strange, at his best, is far beyond anything Dr. Fate has proven capable of. Even the limited amounts of reality warping Dr. Fate is capable of have never gone to the same level as the reality warping Doctor Strange has fought. Hell, the In-Betweener alone is a fantastic representation of how Doctor Strange could handle Dr. Fate. The In-Betweener wielded both the powers of order and chaos, and had nearly unlimited reality warping powers. Yet, in the end, Doctor Strange still won. By comparison, Dr. Fate is nowhere near the In-Betweener's level of reality warping, so I don't even think that's going to save him. In short, Doctor Strange has the advantage in strength, speed, durability, and power. Now, I'm sure you have doubts about this conclusion, and your doubts likely stem from reading about feats that supposedly put Fate on a far higher power level than I've given him here. So, to dispel your doubts, I will quickly go through and debunk these supposed feats. First off, we have this feat here in which Fate was supposedly holding back enough power to destroy the universe. This is incorrect for a number of reasons. 1. This is not the canon Dr. Fate, it is the Dr. Fate of Earth-32. 2. Fate was only able to achieve this feat because he received a power boost from most of the heroes on Earth, including the Spectre. And 3. They are not holding back a universe-busting attack. They are only preventing the Earth from exploding. The reason they're talking about the threat to the universe is because, in the context of the story, the Earth being destroyed would have put Darkseid in a perfect position to conquer the universe. In other words, this feat is complete bunk. Next up, we have this feat where Fate supposedly shook 2 entire universes. First off, the only things getting shook here are Earth 1 and Earth 2, which had been dragged into the same universe at the time of this feat. The next issue is that Fate isn't responsible for shaking anything here. In the context of this story, there was this super advanced alien spaceship that used this technology to drag Earth 1 and Earth 2 into the same universe in order to make them collide. The reason the planets were shaking here is because Dr. Fate blew up the spaceship that was controlling their flight. You can see the spaceship getting destroyed in the upper right corner of this page. In short, not only did Dr. Fate not shake entire universes, he didn't even shake these planets. Next up, we have this feat which supposedly has Fate blocking a multi-universal busting attack. I don't even begin to understand how they reached that conclusion. This explosion is specifically stated in this page to not be an actual explosion, but instead an explosion of love. And the reason Fate put up a force field is because being exposed to that much love would set his soul aflame. In other words, not only is there no reason to think this is some sort of universal explosion, there's actually no reason to think this is a real explosion at all. This feat is nonsense, moving on. Lastly, we have this feat, which some would argue proved that Fate is just as fast as Doctor Strange because the helmet of Naboo outraced the Big Bang. However, while the helmet reached the edge of the universe and bounced back, and that does technically mean it outraced the Big Bang, it did this in the modern day, whereas Doctor Strange outraced the Big Bang at the dawn of time. And in case you didn't know, the Big Bang at the dawn of time was moving trillions of times faster than it is today, which makes this feat here irrelevant. Those are all of the big universal feats that I've seen people arguing about for Dr. Fate. As it stands, I've seen no evidence to suggest that anything Fate has done even remotely stacks up to Doctor Strange. As such, I am putting my money on Doctor Strange winning this death battle. Now for my Devil's Advocate section, in which I discuss how the other character might win. Honestly, these characters are so old and their powers have varied so wildly over the courses of their histories that all it would take for Dr. Fate to win is for Death Battle to focus on a specific, weaker version of Doctor Strange. I chose to include everything from across the entirety of both characters' histories, but Death Battle may decide to only include specific versions of the characters, in which case this fight could easily go either way. I think that Doctor Strange has shown himself to be a consistently more powerful character, but that's just me. That's it for my prediction, which means we've reached the end of the video. I sincerely hope the next death battle doesn't involve comic books. I'd like an easier assignment after this monster. I don't like reading comics in general, but let me tell you, these characters are so old that researching them was a nightmare. Dr. Fate comics were being made before World War II. That's how old he is. It's madness. And if you've never had to read comics that were taking place during World War II, then lucky you! They are so racist, it hurts my brain! Anyway, I do hope you guys enjoyed the video. These were some of the most ridiculous characters I've ever researched, but I do hope I did them justice. Regardless, I don't really have much to say about this match, so I think I'm gonna go ahead and sign off. As for the ending pun, I'd either go with Kent Nelson met a strange fate in this match, or you could say Doctor Strange was the more supreme sorcerer in this battle. Doctor Strange fate. This was a thing. Like if you enjoyed the video, comment if you got something to say, subscribe if you want to see more, and as always, have a fantastic day.